Shalom and welcome to the Fan's Perspective. My name is Eliana Piepsh. I'm a former IDF combat commander and a diehard Commanders fan, and today we are going to do a thorough breakdown and deep dive into all of the picks that the AFC West teams did in this 2026 NFL draft. So earlier this week I broke down the NFC West, last week I did the East, both AFC and NFC East, and today we're just going to do a thorough breakdown. We're going to go team by team in this division. Some teams had a lot of picks, some teams had a little less, some teams had early picks, some teams didn't. So it's an interesting combination. This is an AFC West that last year was extremely competitive, and I just think it's going to become more and more competitive, especially, sadly, with Patrick Mahomes probably going to be missing a few weeks earlier out in the season. That should help this division kind of be more even. Kirk Cousins will raise the floor for Vegas. Maybe Fernando Mendoza will get in on it early in the year and be able to really make an impact for this Vegas team. So overall, this is a really interesting division, and I like these drafts. Basically, all throughout, I was pretty impressed with this. Not exactly my feelings on the NFC West drafts, so if you're curious in that, you can go and give that a listen. I'll put the link up here. And yeah, let's just get right into it. Starting off with the Denver Broncos, alphabetical order. All right, so the Broncos, they did not have a first-round pick since they traded their first for Jayden Waddle. So their first pick actually is at the top of the third round, and they select Tyler Onyedim. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing these names correctly. I apologize. He is a very good penetrating defensive tackle. He's about 6'3". He has really good length and just under 300 pounds. I kind of see him as a John Franklin Myers replacement. He left in free agency to Tennessee. I think this is a similar type of player. The thing about him is he has been productive, and he still has a much higher ceiling that he can hit. His hand usage isn't great. He doesn't kind of marry up his hands and his feet. All these things that you can develop, and with a front like Denver, where they have Zach Allen, Nick Benito, and many other great players on that front. I think this is a team that, even though he's their top pick of this draft, they don't need him to necessarily step into a starter's role. He can kind of develop, come in certain positions and in situations that will help him. And behind the scenes, he can learn from some really great pros in this. And I think that's good business. You let a good free agent walk, you keep that money, and then you just put it right back into a third-round pick, gets in hopefully 4 good, productive, cheap years, and you move on. So overall, I really like that pick for Denver. Now with their second pick, they select Jonah Coleman, who's a running back out of Washington. I love this pick, and I love this fit. This is a Denver team that needed a little bit more oomph in the run game. They re-signed J.K. Dobbins. They still have R.J. Harvey, who was, I believe, their 4th-round pick last year. So they're again in the running back market. Jonah Coleman here is a very stout, good, 5'8", 220-pound running back. He has good receiving upside, and he's just a very clean running back prospect. He does not fumble the ball. He's good in pass pro. He's got a little shake to him, a little wiggle. That's not his main thing, but he has a little something there, and he's just a really good north-south runner. Now, his negatives are he doesn't have great feet, and he doesn't have incredible elusiveness and speed, but that's fine. This is, I think, a really good running back who has a really high floor. I think the fact that he doesn't fumble and good in pass pro is going to give him every opportunity to be on the field and show what he's capable of. And being 5'8" and 220 pounds, you have this low center of gravity. It's very hard for defenders to wrap him up and bring him to the ground. He bounces off contact pretty well. So I think this is a running back who maybe can become the starter eventually. And if not, at least this year, he'll be a very good rotational piece who will be helping that backfield. All right, now with their third pick, you have Cage Casey, who is the offensive tackle out of Boise State. Draft an offensive lineman, I don't really care which round, as long as you invest in that. So he's probably going to be their swing tackle, with McGlinchey on one side and Bowles on the other for this Denver team. They don't really have a hole for their tackles, so having a 4th-round pick to be hopefully your swing tackle of the future is pretty good business. He is 6'5", 310 pounds, and has just under the 33-inch kind of threshold that you would want for a tackle. So he lacks length. His other deficiencies in his games are when he does his kick step, he doesn't quite gain as much ground as you would hope so. He's is left a little bit vulnerable to speed rushers. And obviously his lack of length also leads to defenders being able to get up into his pads and be able to kind of control him from that point. But his positives are he is actually a very good athlete. He has really good feet. He has a really good anchor. He can deal with power. And he's just a really smart player. So this is the type of player who I love to have. This is your backup tackle. Maybe you can develop him and he can learn different techniques, whether it's finding a way to get a larger kick step so he can gain more ground so then he's not as susceptible to speed rushes, or learn different techniques of how to overcome the length deficiency. But overall, like this pick, swing tackle in the 4th round is a great pickup. Then they get Justin Joly, who's the tight end out of NC State. This is more of their receiving tight end option. Maybe the future replacement for Evan Ingram, who knows? Everyone's going to say, maybe he's the Joker, After Sean Payton talked about they wanted a Joker player last year, I assume that would have been one of Colston Loveland or Tyler Warren, and probably he was not envisioning Justin Jolie, but I think he's a player who can fill that role. He's a really good receiving tight end. He's only 240 pounds, so he doesn't really give you that much upside in the run game, but he's a really good contested catch receiver and has all of the ability to be able to develop into a much better route runner, even though right now his route running isn't amazing, but he has all the physical ability to be able to transform that in the next level. Overall, a good receiving tight end. Not necessarily a complete tight end, but you're getting a role player in the 5th round. That makes a lot of sense. Now, with their 7th round pick, they get Miles Scott, who's the safety out of Illinois. He is a 3-year starter for Illinois, a 2-time captain for that team. He's got good size at being almost 210 pounds, but he does need to work on his speed and his tackling. So because of that, he's not necessarily a great slot player, or a big nickel as you would call it, because tackling isn't great and his speed isn't great, which also hurts his ability to be a free safety over the middle. Overall, he's probably projecting to be a player who can contribute on special teams, but he's a really, really smart player who I said is pretty big and physical, so maybe in a pinch he can come in and maybe develop for you and become a average starter at the position. Now with their 2nd 7th rounder, they get Dalen Bentley, the tight end out of Utah. So he is more of your prototypical blocking tight end. He's like 6'4", over 250 pounds. He had like 0 receiving production like at all his first couple of years. I think he had 3 catches in 2 years combined. Then this past year, he had 48 receptions for over 600 yards and 6 receiving touchdowns, which is great, but it's kind of a one-year wonder. You're a little bit scared after he had basically 0 production his previous 2 years. Now, he has some good things in the run game, where he's strong and he's powerful and he can drive players back, especially if he's doing a combo block and then going up to the 2nd level at linebackers. But he does need to develop his technique to be able to get inside of players at the line of scrimmage. So he still has a ways to develop, but this is more of a tight end who you can envision maybe becoming more of a run-blocking tight end. He has that build, he has that frame, and maybe you hope that this last year receiving production, maybe that translates to the NFL. So a good shot to take for a tight end in the 7th round. Now with our final pick of the 7th round, and the final pick for any team, he was Mr. Irrelevant, and that is Red Murdoch, linebacker out of Buffalo. He's extremely productive. Had an insane few years with Buffalo. He had over 39 tackles for loss over 3 years. So that's averaging over 13 tackles per loss per year for 3 years running. He then broke Khalil Mack's forced fumbles record. I think he had 17 to Khalil Mack's 16. So just absolutely insane production from him, and I'm shocked that he was there in the 7th round. Now his deficiencies and the reason why he was there to be Mr. Irrelevant is he doesn't have great sideline to sideline speed. He doesn't have amazing size either. He's about 230 pounds, so lack of size, lack of speed, so he's not going to be able to really help you on 3rd down. He's also not going to be able to help you on short yardage, but if you can just get him on the field and have him punch out a running back, he's going to be able to get that ball out. So a really high upside player, like if he's on the field, there's a good chance he's going to be able to get some negative play from the offense, whether that's a forced fumble or losing yards on a tackle for loss. But he also might give up something in coverage. There's a lot of options here. This is a very good Denver defense. They have a lot of multiple versatile players, so hopefully he can add into that. So overall, I loved this draft. You have a lot of role players here, like their first pick in Tyler Onyenum. Jonah Coleman maybe becomes your starter in a few years. Cage Cansey as a backup tackle is really nice, and then maybe Justin Jolie, you give him some packages where he can play. So all those top 4 guys, I can see them really producing and helping out the team this year. The rest of the 7th rounders, probably not this year. They're more developmental, but that makes sense because they're 7th round picks. I really like this draft for a stacked team. I'm going to give this an A draft. I loved it. All right, so that was Denver. Let us now move on. And here we go. Kansas City kind of had a down year this past year after going to the Super Bowl. Any year that wasn't going to the Super Bowl year was going to be a down year for them, but they also missed the playoffs. So that was kind of a shock. As I mentioned at the top of the show, Patrick Mahomes towards ACL towards the end of the year. We don't know if he's going to be available to start this next year. So they decide to kind of go full on defense. The majority of their picks this year were on defense. I don't hate it, but they did have opportunities to get receivers and help out Patrick Mahomes. Like, one of the receivers was going to be there at 9 if they decided not to trade up for Delane. Omar Cooper Jr. was there at 29 if they decided not to get Peter Woods. So time will tell whether or not Kansas City has enough offensive weapons around Mahomes and Justin Fields or whoever's going to start for them at the beginning of the year. and whether they were correct, that they should invest in the defense to limit the opponent's scoring, and then you just know as long as we hold the opponent to under 17 points or below, Mahomes is going to find a way to get us to 20, which I think makes sense because Mahomes has proven the ability to do so throughout his illustrious career. So the Chiefs traded up from pick 9 to pick 6. They gave up, honestly, only a third and a fifth, which trades inside the top 10 usually command more than that, but in a lesser draft this year, and for a team in Cleveland that just wanted to move out because they knew they would get better value, this is what happened. Kansas City decided to select Mansour Delane. They probably assumed that maybe Washington would have taken him with the 7th pick. It's a huge position of need. He's a native of Silver Spring, which is right there in the DMV, so it would make sense that Washington would possibly have taken him, and Kansas City was scared about that. Plus, New Orleans was the next pick, also have a hole at corner, with Alontae Taylor leaving New Orleans in free agency, plus he just played at LSU in Louisiana. Both of those teams, or either of those teams, could have taken Delane. Kansas City decides not to take any chances, and they take what it was clearly the top cornerback in this class after Jamon McCoy's injury scare and his crazy fall in this draft, but we'll get to that later. So Mansour Delane gets selected here. He is just a really, really clean prospect. He's just under 6 foot. He's a little bit lighter. He's under 190 pounds, but he can play man, he can play zone. He was a starter at Virginia Tech for a couple of years. Before this, he then transferred to LSU and just had an incredible year. He had 11 pass breakups, 2 interceptions, just did not let many receptions at all, even for an LSU team that's severely underwhelmed. But he played man, he played zone, depending on the scheme and the game coverage, and would also excel at that. So he's a very fast, he ran a 4.3, fluid athlete. He has great hips, he can move, he reads the quarterback extremely well, and tries to kind of jump on routes. I think he's a little bit better off of the line of scrimmage, where he can read the quarterback and read route combinations. With his lack of size, because he's under 190 pounds, he also only has 30-inch arms, so that's not very long arms. I don't love him as much in a press man situation, especially in the NFL when the receivers are bigger, faster, stronger. But this is a corner who can still excel in that, and this is basically an easy replacement for Trent McDuffie. He should be able to be a day one starter, and Steve Spagnuolo should be able to have a field day with him. Now, at pick 29, Kansas City decides to stay put. There was a lot of teams who traded ahead of them and traded behind them for different players that they wanted to. Kansas City decided they were just going to stick and pick, and they select Peter Woods, the defensive tackle from Clemson. He is 6'2", just under 300 pounds. He had 8.5 tackles for loss and 3 sacks, and then this past year, he had 3.5 tackles for loss and only 2 sacks. So similar to most of the players on Clemson, they had a lot of high expectations going into this year. He had a much better 2024 than he did 2025. And in 2025, everything kind of fell apart, both offensively and defensively. And Peter Woods was one of those players who did not live up to the hype. Going into this year, he was projected to be a top 10 pick. He did not have the production and did not have, honestly, the pre-draft process to really warrant that. He didn't do anything at the combine. He also came in weighing pretty light and then decided not to run, which is a weird combination. So I'm assuming when he weighed in at like 298 or something, that he was kind of getting his weight down so then he could run. So I'm assuming he's more of a 300-ish pound player, maybe a little bit like 305. But now, I don't know, just kind of raises some questions. But this is an extremely talented player. He was a top 10 player in his high school class, so this is an extremely highly regarded prospect from the time he was like 18 years old. He's a penetrating defensive end. He has really good hands, and he marries the hands and the feet. He has good technique. And with Chris Jones on the other side of you, he's going to be dealing with a lot of one-on-ones. He's going to be able to maybe help out on stunts and plays like that. And Steve Spagnuolo can get creative with this defensive front. And we'll talk about a player who's drafted just after him who might be able to really reap the rewards of some of these stunts and these plays that can confuse offensive linemen. And I think Peter Woods, playing opposite Chris Jones, and maybe in a few years down the line, is a disruptor to a similar extent, which would be just the dream for Kansas City. And for now, he can learn behind Chris Jones. He will, I assume, be a starter, but he's not going to be the guy who's garnering all the attention. And hopefully he can learn from, honestly, the best in the business right now and can transform that into a lot of production on the field. Now, at the top of the second round, Kansas City continues with this focus on the defensive line, and they select R. Mason Thomas, the edge rusher out of Oklahoma. He is basically just a designated pass rusher. He's 240 pounds, he's also like 6'2", but he is an amazing designated pass rusher. He has great speed, he has great bend, and great production. Over the last 2 years, he has 22 tackles for loss and over 15 sacks. So that's great production for an Oklahoma team. He is not going to help you out in the run game, but that's not why you're drafting him. You're drafting him to get after the passer. You're hoping with the two, hopefully, monsters on the inside with Chris Jones and Peter Woods. You have George Karlaftis, and maybe you can put in Armason Thomas, and that starts becoming a really formidable front four. You know, have Mansour-Delane in the secondary kind of shoring things up there, and hopefully you can start stressing out offenses and really putting the pressure on them and maybe creating some turnovers to get the ball back to Patrick Mahomes. Now with their next pick, they select Jaden Kennedy, who is their 4th-round pick out of Oregon. He's kind of a slot cornerback. He's a little bit on the smaller side. He's 5'10", 180, but he's just one of those classic, really competitive, really good movement, very sticky in coverage corners. Now, his negatives are he's small, so he's not really going to turn over the ball too much because he doesn't have the arm length and the height to really get to 50-50 balls and be able to contest those type of catches. He also gets bullied at the top end of routes where bigger receivers are just going to be able to kind of give him a subtle push-off, and that's going to create a lot of separation. And his tackling isn't a huge thing because he's smaller, so running backs are usually able to run him over. But on passing downs, he is extremely sticky in coverage. He is very smart. He can read concepts, and he trusts what he sees. He goes full out there and makes plays on the ball. So this, I could see kind of being their slot corner of the future. You are going to have to be aware that he's not really going to be able to stick his nose in and make such a difference in the run game, but he has a very specific role, and he's very good at that role. Now, with their 5th-round pick, they select Emmett Johnson, the running back out of Nebraska, who was extremely productive this past year. He had over 1,400 yards rushing, and he comes in to be the primary backup for their big-ticket free agent addition in Kenneth Walker. Now, I'm not exactly sure how Kansas City is going to distribute the ball in the backfield because Kenneth Walker was part of a two-headed monster in Seattle with him and Charbonnet, so he's never really been the full 3-down back. They've paid him like it, so are they going to give him the ball like that? Or are they thinking that he's at his best and he's most fresh when he's only getting, let's say, 60% of the carries? And are they going to give Emmett Johnson more of a workload? So I'm not sure, but he's extremely productive, this Emmett Johnson. He's a north and south running back. He's not that big. He's just over 200 pounds, so he's not necessarily someone who's going to break tackles, but he's extremely versatile. He has good hands, and a player who I think can take the load off of Kenneth Walker when needed, and could probably be a very good number 2 in the NFL very early on in his career. Now, they continue their trend in the 5th round of giving weapons to Patrick Mahomes, and they select Cyrus Allen, the receiver out of Cincinnati. This is a down-the-field threat. He's extremely fast, and he's really great on fade routes and go routes. He isn't amazing at the catch point. He's only 180 pounds, but he does have adequate height of being 5'11". He does need to improve his route running, but with his speed, that really backs off defenders, and he's someone who can get open. And this is just another player who really fits into this Kansas City mold of receiver, which is just like a downfield threat, and being able to push the ball downfield. So I think getting someone like this in the 5th round, you just kind of need to replenish that, because they always draft those type of players, and every 2 years or so, they're going to finish up their rookie deal, and then Kansas City's going to have to make a decision whether to re-sign them or not. So I think getting another young player with this ability, who I do think has a higher ceiling, because I think he can really develop his route running. He has the ability to really be able to change directions quickly, even though we haven't seen it consistently. I do think he has that with him. So as long as Kansas City get the best out of him, he could be probably like a number 3 receiver on this team. And if not, and he's more of a number 4 or more of a role player in certain situations, then that's fine, but that's a 5th round pick. What do you expect? Now at their 7th round pick, the shocker, Garrett Nussmeier was there. I still don't know why he fell so far. He had a great year in 2024 for LSU, had a very disappointing year this past year in 2025, partially because his play tailed off, and also because he had an injury that limited him to only 9 games this year. In 2024, he had over 4,000 passing yards, he had over 30 total touchdowns, he had 29 passing touchdowns, and in this year, all of his numbers got slashed in half. With just a little over 1,900 passing yards and 12 passing touchdowns, he had a really disappointing year. As I said before, partly was due to a core injury that he had, and that caused him to miss a few games at the end of the year. But this is a player who I did not expect to be here in the 7th round. I think he can day one be your backup, and maybe if you develop him, he can be your starter. Obviously, for Kansas City, that's not why he's here. They drafted him probably to be a good backup for the first year or so for Patrick Mahomes, but hopefully they can develop him and do something similar to what New England did a couple years ago with Joe Milton. You draft someone in the 6th round, maybe you trade him for a 3rd round pick, you get surplus value, so I'm assuming Kansas City's going to hope to do that, and I would assume they would be able to. Going into this year, he was thought of as maybe a top 10 pick at quarterback. He has a good arm. His father's an offensive coordinator, so he's been around the game of football. His negatives are sometimes he's more of a gunslinger. He just throws the ball at 100 miles per hour. There's not really a lot of touch, and sometimes he takes unnecessary risks. But for a team that has Patrick Mahomes, there's no need to have, first of all, any expectations for him. And also, you can believe that he's going to learn from the best in the business right now, and hopefully he can develop, and then the Chiefs can trade him and get surplus value for him. I really like this draft. I'm going to give it a B+. I'm going to take off a little bit for their trade up from Mansour Delane. I don't think they needed to. And I don't absolutely love him as a top 6 player selected in this draft. I thought he was more in the 10 range. I think his weight and length concerned me a little bit more. Maybe I'm discarded from Emmanuel Forbes, who knows. But I'm a little bit more suspicious of that. But that's not going to hurt them too much. I also will take off a little bit just because they didn't really address the offense until the 4th round. But I do like that they went for the defense. It's how I believe if you have an elite quarterback, you should really invest in that defense. As I mentioned before, your quarterback is probably going to find a way to get you to 20, 21, 24 points. So as long as your defense keeps the opponent below that, you'll be fine. And if you build your team like Cincinnati and you don't really care what the opponent gets to, as long as I score 45, I'll win more than I don't, which is not always true, as Cincinnati has seen over the last few years. So I do love the investment in the defense. I don't necessarily love the defensive players. Army St. Thomas, I think they were better edge rushers there if they wanted an edge rusher. Peter Woods is a high-risk, high-reward type of player. And Delane, I like the player, I just don't love the trade-up. So because of that, it takes away a little bit from the grade, but a B+, is very, very admirable. All right, we are 2 down. Let's go see who is next. We have the Las Vegas Raiders. All right, the Raiders. First overall pick, Fernando Mendoza. I apologize for any Vegas fans out there. No one has ever talked about Mendoza this whole draft process because it's just been such a slam dunk that he's going to go to Vegas, and I think I'm going to continue that trend. He was clearly the best quarterback prospect in this draft. He came up in clutch moments. Maybe he wasn't as impressive as previous first overall picks have been in a snap-to-snap basis, but even when he gets punched in the mouth, whether it's like against Ohio State, where he basically did get punched in the mouth on their first play, or whether it's because he throws an interception and he has to will the team back, he does it in the clutch. He has good enough arm strength. He has okay pocket awareness, but I think that is just going to progress in the NFL, especially with Tom Brady being his minority owner. Great football smart, wants to study the game, wants to be the best at it, and I think Kirk Cousins is a great mentor for him to learn from. So I don't expect him to start Week 1, Tom Brady's been very vocal about how that's not the way teams should do it, and that they need their quarterback to sit. He's talked about years. I don't know if Vegas is necessarily going to sit him for years, but I think they're going to give Kirk Cousins the opportunity to fail, and then once the boos and the cheers for Mendoza get loud enough, I think they will then move on to him. But I think he is very worthy of the first overall pick. Maybe he's not a Caleb Williams type of prospect, but he's very worthy of it. I think he's similar to Cam Ward of last year. And it's quarterback, so it's going to get pushed up. And I think this is a player who can lead Vegas to the playoffs in the future. I think he's that caliber of quarterback, and we'll see what his ceiling ends up being. With their second round pick, they selected Treydon Stukes out of Arizona. He was the player who a lot of teams really kind of fell in love with. We as a, draft community who are aware of this kind of got word of the last couple of weeks of the process. He ran a 4.3. He's 6 foot, only 190 pounds, but he has amazing ball skills and ball production. He had 4 interceptions this past year, plus 6 pass breakups. He's a 6-year starter, but part of the reason for that is because he tore his ACL a couple of years back. This is not necessarily a player who's just been bouncing from school to school. He was a former walk-on, which is kind of crazy to me, because if he runs a 4.3 and he's 6 foot, I don't understand how that player is a walk-on, but it is. And he ended up being a team captain. He's always in the film room. He's studying. You can really see that translate to the football field. So he has great football instincts. He has great ball skills. His negatives are he isn't the most fluid athlete when it comes to change of directions, but this is a very, very good player who is now kind of filling a hole that has become the new thing in vogue now in the NFL of these kind of big nickels. He can fill against the run. I do think he's good enough in coverage, even though he doesn't have maybe the oiliest tips, but it's more than good enough, and obviously he has the top end speed that he can catch up to anyone. Now with our third round pick, they select Kayron Crawford out of Auburn. This is a really interesting player. He only started playing football in his senior year of high school, so he's very new to football. And he kind of bounced around a couple of programs before he ended up being at Auburn, and he had a pretty productive year there. He had 9.5 tackles for loss, 5 sacks. This was a player who was asked to cover and to rush. He, at this point in time, is kind of a designated pass rusher only in the NFL. He doesn't have either the weight or just the football knowledge to really be that good of a run defender. He sometimes is unaware of a running back bouncing out. In run defense, he also doesn't have the strength to hold up against offensive linemen in that sense. But he has really good speed, really good burst off the line, and he has really good bend, whether that's with his hips or his ankles. So he has all of the tools to become a really productive edge rusher, and he's very new to this football thing, so he's just scratching the surface. I think this is a good bet for your third-round pick to kind of hope that he can unlock the high end of his possibilities. Now, with their second third-round pick, they select Trey Zune III, who is an offensive lineman, can probably play all 5 positions for you in the NFL. He's 6'6", over 310 pounds, but he has sub 33-inch arm length. So because of that, he's probably not going to project to be a tackle in the NFL, and the Raiders just signed Tyler Linderbaum to this huge free agent deal. So he's probably going to be, he might even be able to be a day one plug-and-play guard. Being a 4-year starter for Texas A&M, this guy knows football, he's very technically sound, and he has a good enough anchor to be able to survive inside. He even started a couple games at center this past year. He also has really good hands, so he has really good technique, which is not surprising for being a 4-year starter, but his athleticism kind of lacks. So all these things make him seem to be more of an interior guy, and with Linderbaum's contract, I'm assuming he'll be a guard. He might never be this all-pro or Pro Bowl type of player, but I think he can be a day one starter for this team, and that's what they desperately need after the nightmare that was the 2025 season for this team. Next up, they make the decision to go for Jermon McCoy. No other team had the guts to take him, and they ended up taking him here. This could end up being a steal. This could end up being a steal for 3 years, and then he's out of the league. This could end up being just a flat-out steal. This could end up being someone who maybe he plays a while in the NFL, but isn't quite the prospect everyone thought he was, or his injury history might be a serious problem, and maybe he never really gets on the field. I hope for his sake that this injury concerns are just overblown, and that he can come in and be a shutdown corner, because that is what he has the ability to be. This is a huge need for Vegas. This is also a team that is a couple of years away in a very competitive division, so take your shot at this corner, and he's going to fill a hole for you, and maybe this medical debacle is overblown. Now, I personally thought maybe he should have gone to Seattle, kind of in the back end of day 2, because they do have a hole at corner, and Seattle is in a win-now mode, so I thought that would actually really work. They're still going to be competing for a Super Bowl over the next couple of years, so as long as his knee can survive for those 24-ish months, that it would be worth it, but Seattle decides not to, and Vegas ends up taking a bet on him. There's been a lot of talk about his injury, so with his play on the field, he missed this past year with a torn ACL. That actually is not the injury concern, it's actually with his other knee, but I think everyone's kind of heard all about it. In 2024, he had without a doubt the best tape of any corner in this whole draft. He was amazing at man-to-man. He even gave Jeremiah Smith a run for his money, and I absolutely loved him. I thought he was a better corner than Mansour Delane. Now, Delane, first of all, has the zone and man ability, where McCoy has mostly only shown man, but man coverage is more valuable than zone coverage, so me personally, I wouldn't care as much. But Mansour Delane does not have the injury concerns, so obviously Delane went first, but McCoy had incredible tape, and it's just all hanging on the medicals, whether or not that it's a problem or not, and they decide to take a flyer on him in the 4th round, which I think makes a lot of sense and is good process. Now, with their second 4th round pick, they select Mike Washington Jr., the running back out of Arkansas, who absolutely blew up the combine. He's 6'2", 220 pounds, ran a 4.3, and just in the underwear Olympics, he looked absolutely incredible. Now, his tape is a little bit more questionable. Now, his consistency over the years hasn't been great. He's transferred from school to school, and this past year he did have over 1,000 rushing yards, which is great. And as I said, he has all of the tools to be an incredible running back. But he doesn't have great vision, and even though he does have a 4.3 40-yard dash, it takes a little bit of time for his speed to warm up. So he needs to kind of start heading downhill before he hits the hole, so then he can explode through it. He can't just be there in a step or two, and for you to expect he's going to run away from players. In addition to that, he has had fumble issues, which is alarming, but he has the size to run over people, and he does have the breakaway speed. So I think a 4th round pick is more in the range where it makes sense. He will obviously be the understudy to Ashton Jeanty, who they selected 6th overall last year, so they have 2 young running backs who they're going to pair up. Ashton Jeanty is more of the bowling ball, impossible to bring him down, and has good speed, and absolutely incredible vision, where Mike Washington over here has the track star type of speed, but maybe not the vision that Ashton Jeanty has. Now with their 5th round pick, they selected Dalton Johnson, another secondary player from Arizona. He's 5'11", 190. He is a tackling machine. He has had over 85 tackles in each of the last 3 years and getting over 90 over the last 2 years. He has really good instincts. He reads the quarterback very well. And if he can beat the blocker to the spot, he is great in run defense. The problem is he's a little bit smaller. He doesn't have the NFL ideals in height, weight, and speed. So I don't know if he's going to hold up on the NFL level. He also is not going to be a very good back-end safety because he does lack the speed, and when he's in coverage against someone who's faster than him, he tends to get a little grabby and can get beat over the top. But this is a player who's going to give you plus value in special teams, and maybe giving him the right role as a kind of slot defender in the right situations will be able to get the best out of him, and he can really produce for this team. Now, with their other 5th-round pick, they get Hezekiah Masses, who gives me a little bit Emmanuel Forbes vibes. He's 6'1.5", just about 180 pounds, so that's what gives me the Forbes vibes. And in addition to that, he had insane ball production from this past year, but is not consistent with his ball production for his previous years. So 3 years ago and 2 years ago, he had 4 pass defense and an interception in each of those 2 seasons, and then this past year, 13 pass breakups and 5 interceptions. So incredible ball production this past year, so he shows that he has the ability to be able to capitalize on the ball in the air. Now, is this more of a one-year wonder, and now he's going to get drafted a little bit higher than he should because of that? Maybe, and he is lighter weight, and he does grab. So there are holding calls, and there could have been even more holding calls over this last year's film. But he is a ball hawk, and that has value. So a Vegas team like this, they got Jermon McCoy, who's just your all-around great man corner, who has injury concerns. You know, Hezekiah Masses, who maybe has that ball hawking ability. Hopefully he doesn't get beat and doesn't have to hold, and maybe his ball production continues on this year. But he does give me Emmanuel Forbes trauma. Now, getting Emmanuel Forbes in the 5th round would not have been so bad, because he showed, at least for LA, in certain schemes, in certain situations, he can be a starting caliber corner. That's just not someone you want to take in the 1st round, as Washington did. So I don't hate this pick, but just as a Commanders fan, trauma is very much alive. Now, with their 6th pick, Vegas selects Malik Benson, receiver out of Oregon. This is a just straight up deep threat burner. He broke all of the school records in his junior college. He then transferred up to Alabama and Florida State, did not have the production that he wanted, and then he went over to Oregon this past year and had over 700 yards receiving, so a really solid year. He had over 16 yards per catch, and 5 of his 6 touchdown receptions this year were for 40-plus yards. He's 6', 189, so good height and honestly pretty good weight for a speed receiver. He is great at tracking the ball downfield, great at having late hands, and just taking the top off the defense. His negatives are he does get out-muscled by corners, and his route running isn't the most developed. What is shocking about him is that for a deep threat, he is surprisingly physical and will go over the middle and will make contested catches and will put his body on the line. So all of that are huge pluses for this team. And this is very much a player who I would want to take a chance on in the 6th round. A certified burner who has had production in that way. He's a tough player, and you can't teach toughness. What you can teach is maybe better route running, and he's got solid hands. So this is a player who I absolutely love to take a shot at this point in the draft. Now in the 7th round, they select Brandon Cleveland out of NC State. He's just more of a run defender. He's not going to give you much pass rush upside. He can give you some 2-gap. He's a big dude, and maybe he can develop a little bit of pass rush upside. I have my doubts. He's a 7th round pick. You give him a role. Now, I don't love how they didn't address the interior defensive line until his pick. They did select Kerryon Crawford, who was a defensive lineman, being an edge rusher, but run defense was a big problem for this Vegas team, and I don't think they really did much to help that out. Maybe he can come in on sub packages and help out on short yardage plays, but that is very hard to ask of a 7th round rookie to, come in, it's 3rd and 2, and stop the tush push, or it's 3rd and 1, and stop this, Derrick Henry from running up the gut here. That is a very big ask, but maybe this is a player who's going to be able to find his role. There's not many people on this Vegas roster that can do that, so hopefully he can make the 53-man roster with that specific skill set and make a name for himself. I really like this draft. This gets an A- for me. They really improved on the secondary. They have an upside edge rusher, which is extremely important, and maybe he will replace Max Crosby or help replace Max Crosby if he's not here. I'm assuming next year. It kind of seems like he's just going to stick on the team since they did not trade him before the draft. Maybe it'll be another Micah Parsons trade where before the season a star edge rusher goes. I don't know, but it's kind of a little bit more leaning towards Max Crosby staying on the team. Now, that's great for Crawford to learn from him, and he's someone who can develop, But having an edge rusher who has a high ceiling is a very smart play, especially because edge rusher is one of the highest paid positions in the NFL. So if he does hit, you then have really cheap production from a player of his caliber. They also tried to improve the offensive line. They are hopefully going to be taking a little bit of the load off of Ashton Genty after last year, and they put in a ton of resources at the secondary, which is extremely important. Now, the reason why this doesn't get an A or an A plus is because I do feel like they needed to give maybe a receiver or two and give some help to Fernando Mendoza outside of Brock Bowers and Jack Besh, who didn't really do much of anything last year, and the Vikings number 3 receiver who they gave a ton of money to. I'm forgetting his name. But I do think they needed to kind of give a little bit more weapons to Fernando and Kirk Cousins, you don't know. So because of that, it bumps the grade down a little bit, but overall I really like this draft. All right, last but not least, LA Chargers. Let's get it. All right, with their first round pick, they select Akeem Messidor. This is great value for a player. Now, the reason why he was here is because he's going to be a 25-year-old rookie, and he's kind of bounced around college football a little bit. He's a Canadian player, so he has not always grown up with football. Now, he is 25, so he's no longer new to football, as some of these 20, 21-year-old guys, like Crawford, for example, only came to football at 18 years old, so he's only been in football for 3-4 years. Akeem Messidor's been here for a little bit of time, so he doesn't really get that benefit of the doubt. But he's a very clean prospect. What you see is what you get. I remember some of the knocks on the Bosa brothers coming in is that there is no more ceiling to hit. Now, for the Bosa brothers, because they're already at an all-pro level, or borderline all-pro level, for sure, Pro Bowl level, so that's why they got selected in the top 5 of each of their respective drafts. Kim Messer isn't quite at that level, but kind of what you see is what you get. There isn't really that much more to unlock. Now, if there is anything more to unlock, Khalil Mack will help figure it out with him. LA probably doesn't know how long Khalil Mack is going to be with them for. He just keeps signing these one-year deals with them. So having another edge rusher to be able to maybe in the future help replace his production, I think is smart. And edge rusher, as I said before, is an extremely valuable position. And you need some help getting after the quarterback in that division with Mahomes and Nix and now hopefully Mendoza. Now with their second round pick, as you can see with this whole draft, they made a very obvious effort in upgrading that offensive line. They will not let what happened this past year happen ever again. They need to protect Justin Herbert, which is extremely important, and that they really must do, because he was just abused this past year. So they select Jake Slaughter. He's listed here at center, but he don't think he's going to start at center in his rookie year. They signed Tyler Biadasz, who was cut by the Commanders, so I don't know why we did that, but alright, is what it is. So he's probably going to be their starting center this year. Maybe in the future, Jake Slaughter will switch him out, but I think for now he's going to probably just step in to be a starting guard for them. He's a very smart player. He has started many games, very technically sound. Now, his athleticism doesn't jump off the screen to you, but you don't necessarily need that from your interior offensive line. As a former center, he's very good at kind of pointing out blitzes and knowing which way to slide the offensive line, so that's just going to help the Chargers offense as a whole. And I think his smarts will maybe help him overcome his maybe athleticism deficiencies. Now with their fourth round pick, I wasn't as in love. They selected Brendan Thompson here out of Mississippi State. He is just a speed threat. He ran a 4.26 40. So if you run extremely fast, you're going to get selected because someone's going to take a chance on you. And that someone was the Chargers and Mike McDaniel. I don't love this. He's just a deep threat. He's not shifty. He's just straight line linear speed. So he's not someone who you could just throw a screen pass to, and he's going to make guys miss, and he's going to explode. He's not like a Tyreek Hill in that sense. He's just more of a downfield threat. He's smaller. He's like 165 pounds. This is more of a gimmick player, but he can't even be a gimmick player because he can't really do, or he's not great at things close to the line of scrimmage, and he's just 40 yards down the field. I don't love this. If you wanted to take him in the 6th round, fine, 4.26. Someone's going to have to take a chance on that, but I think 4th round, and what is that, pick 105 is way too high. Now with their next pick in the 4th round, they select Travis Burke, who's just going to be a swing tackle for them. They have 2 amazing tackles. He's not going to usurp any of them. And being 6'8", 325 pounds, that I do not think he can move to the inside. He is a huge man. He has great length. And when he gets his hands on you, you're going to feel like he has a powerful punch. His negatives are, when you're someone that big, it's often harder for you to move, and he's not very athletically gifted, and he kind of lumbers around places. But honestly, in pass pro, good luck getting around a 6'8" man with 34-inch arms. Like, that's gonna take some time, no matter how talented you are. So I think, honestly, for a 4th round pick, he is probably gonna be your swing tackle, and I think that's good value. Now, they select Genesis Smith, yet another Arizona defensive back. And he has, like, such high ceilings in some cases and such low floors in others. He's 6'2", 200 pounds. 2 years ago, he had 6 pass breakups, 3 interceptions, and 2 forced fumbles. This past year, 8 pass breakups, 1 interception, and yet again, 2 forced fumbles. He's always around the ball, he has amazing ball skills, and he's always turning over the ball and creating chaos in the defensive backfield, which is what you want as a defense. Now, his negatives are he does not like tackling. Like, not a fan of it, so he's just not going to do it. And that is kind of problematic for tackle football. So you have to hope either that he gains more toughness, he goes to the NFL, he has now millions of dollars on the line, and that he'll find a way somewhere deep inside to be able to tackle the opponent. Or maybe just kind of keep him as a free safety and just hope that he doesn't have to tackle. But either way, it's a little bit questionable, his effort in that sense. Now, with a 4th round pick, you're kind of banking on all of the turnovers that he can create, and maybe looking away from all those run defense blunders. So it's kind of high risk, high reward, but this is an extremely talented player, and there's not a lot of people who can turn the ball over like he does. We're now going to move on to their final 3 picks. So Nick Barrett is their 5th round pick for this draft. He is just a run defending defensive tackle. He doesn't have great athleticism, he doesn't have great explosiveness, so he's not really good at chasing down running backs who are kind of away from his gap. He also doesn't have much pass rush ceiling, it seems. But his positives are he's long. He's got over 33-inch arms, and he can just stack and shed. He's got really good power, really good bull rush. So that's kind of a role player that you have. 5th round, I don't mind it at all. Now, Logan Taylor with their 6th round pick is a 4-year starter at Boston College. He is big, he's 6'6", he is stout, he's over 310 pounds. His negative is he doesn't have great athleticism. This is always just kind of, when you get later in the draft, you're going to have either you have good athleticism, but you don't really stake up to power that much, or you're really good, powerful, tough, burly guard, but if your opponent has a little bit more athleticism than you, then you're going to find a little bit of problems. So that's kind of the 2 guards here in Alex Harkey and in Logan Taylor. So Logan Taylor is more of the burly, strong, physical, good core strength, good against bull rush guard, who maybe doesn't move as well, where Alex is more of the athletically gifted, moves very well, but maybe doesn't have the core strength. They both honestly have pretty good hands. Logan Taylor has a little bit of better kind of hands and technique than Alex does, but you're just hoping one of these players works out so they can be either a backup guard or maybe even can develop into a starting guard. Now, this is another draft that I really liked. I am going to give it only a B though, and that is partially because Brendan Thompson, I think, really is a reach and not a player who I would take this high. And secondly, I think this is a defense that needed a little bit more upgrades than it got. I think Jesse Minter really helped cover up a lot of these deficiencies on this team. And I don't know if these corners are really going to be able to have as good a year as they did last year with maybe a lesser scheme now. I do like the fact that they invested a lot in offensive line. They had 4 offensive line picks, and I do like that. It might just be a little bit of an overkill, and maybe instead of an offensive lineman here, take a corner. Maybe take someone. I do like Genesis Smith and his turnover ability, but his lack of run support and tackling ability really kind of does scare me off. But Akeem Asador, I think, is a starter for you. Jake Slaughter's a starter for you. Travis Burke isn't a starter, but he has a role as a backup tackle and make sure that what happened this year does not happen. Genesis Smith maybe has a role. Maybe Nick Barrett also has a role. So I like this draft. It's just a B just because of those 2 points. But again, I really like this class. I really like what the AFC West did. This is a really competitive division who, sadly, 2 of these quarterbacks got injured last year in Bo Nix and Patrick Mahomes towards the end of the season and really just kind of cratered their whole season. The Chargers, on the other hand, had everyone but their quarterback go down injured, and Vegas didn't really have a quarterback who was good enough to necessarily elevate the team. But now I think all 4 are on a much more similar plane. I think Kansas City's team as a whole has taken a step back, and Mahomes' injury kind of gives question marks. Denver is just an extremely talented team, but do they have as many game breakers? I don't really see many game breakers on their squad, just overall solid top to bottom. The Chargers, they have the ceiling, they have Justin Herbert, and they have this great offensive line, and Omarion Hampton, who they just drafted last year, and they have the receivers, Ladd McConkey, to be able to make plays. And then on defense, you have Derwin James, Khalil Mack, you have the stars there, but they just cannot seem to get it done in the playoffs. So they oftentimes get there, but just then they crumble under pressure. And then Vegas is this young team. They're kind of at this next step of the rebuild. They have Brock Bowers, they have Fernando Mendoza. Stukes, I think, is honestly like a player who could really be a game changer, maybe the face of that defense. And this is a team that could really start to turn things around. So I really love this division. I think it's going to be extremely fun to see. And next week, we'll be starting on the AFC and NFC North.